Hi guys, so welcome to Tips and Thoughts on Creativity, Part 2. Yesterday, just to recap very quickly, we discussed point 1 that essentially we tend to think that creative people are a certain type of people, and we don't always associate ourselves as being particularly creative. People who see themselves maybe as very practical people don't tend to associate themselves mentally with so-called creative types. But the point I'm making is that essentially, fundamentally, we're all creative beings just by virtue of how we're made. Okay, so that creativity is our true nature. Secondly, in order to access that, we've got to unlearn a lot of habits and attitudes. Excuse me. Much more than acquire new skills. We tend to think of creativity as something that maybe we learn and hone, which is true to a certain extent. Certainly, creative skills are certainly learned and honed. But our inherent creativity needs to be released and nurtured and cherished. And so, from that point of view, we were just discussing the idea that creativity is something that we access through a process of letting go of habits and conditioning that we have learned along the way. A good example that I should have included yesterday, when I was a little kid, we were sitting in primary school, I was maybe 5-6 years old, drawing away, doing little pictures of battles from World War II or something like that, little stick figure things, and of course adding my own sound effects, all that type of stuff. Essentially filmmaking in my mind. I was doing storyboards and creating a soundtrack as we went along. Had a couple of little buddies sitting around beside me, looking over my shoulder, and one of them said, "Wow, Alan, that's really good." And the teacher or my mother or somebody overheard me going, "Yeah, I know." And that was the most natural response I had, was just, "Yeah, look at what I can create. It's absolutely fantastic. I'm the bee's knees. Isn't this wonderful?" Now, with the best of intentions, what that teacher, I can't remember whether it was a teacher or my mother, just taught me, look, when somebody gives you a compliment about something that you've done, basically don't celebrate your work. You kind of pass it off. You kind of go, "Oh, it's not really very good," or, "Oh, thank you very much for saying so." But, and they meant well, and there's a good point. There's definitely a good point to knowing how to play the game socially. But that idea of somehow that it's kind of fundamentally inappropriate to celebrate wholeheartedly the beauty and the fun and wonderfulness of what you create was kind of, that's an interesting lesson to have learned. Maybe you remember similar encounters with the adult world as you were growing up, and maybe you could let us know about them. So thirdly, then, we talked about getting comfortable with failure. And that whole thing of just going, what's the worst that can happen? It's going to be crap. Big deal. Expect the first 10 drafts of your screenplay. Expect the first 9 editions. Expect the first 3 films to be pretty awful. I mean, even Stanley Kubrick, God rest him, apparently we were discussing Kubrick films, and I said, "Oh yeah, I loved his first film, The Killing," which is an astonishing movie. But somebody told me, he says, "No, it wasn't his first film. His first film was another movie that was so bad that when he was famous, he bought up all the rights to it and had it trashed." So he had an impeccable record of great work as a result. Okay, so we get comfortable with failure. It loosens us up. It's like a thing when you're single and there's a beautiful girl and you want to go and ask her out, and the more attached you get to a certain outcome, the more difficult it is to achieve it, and it sort of sucks any kind of joy out of and fun and freedom out of the process as well. So we just kind of say, look, you know what, I'm going to fail, but failing is just creating outcomes from which I promise I'm going to learn and improve. So the old cliche of Edison actually looking at the light bulb and saying, I failed 10,000 times to create the light bulb. Or he says, or I could reframe that and just say, look, I found 10,000 ways not to create the light bulb, and that led me to the way to be able to do it. Apparently he stole the idea from Tesla anyway, which is another story. You'll find out I'm quite a conspiracy theorist as we get to know each other better. So today's tips: first of all, keep like-minded company. Now, a really good tip to developing creativity is to keep like-minded company. Now, in Sunday school growing up, I remember that one of the adages that we were given, one of the metaphors, was that if we wanted to keep our faith burning strong, we needed to be in the company of fellow believers. Now, I can see why they would teach that, because essentially The image was given of a piece of coal, and it's burning away happily in the fire with all the other little embers. It's taken out and then sat on the hearth, and after 15-20 minutes it goes black and cold. All the other embers are burning away happily because they're feeding off each other's heat. And you can see where this is going. Essentially, if we isolate ourselves, we lose energy. Okay, so if you want to be around that creative buzz, if you want to burn bright creatively, if you want to get inspired, in short, and you want to be inspiring, get around like-minded people. So in other words, hang out with actors, make an effort to go out and spend time with fellow creative people, especially when you don't feel like doing it. That's often when you get the biggest payoff. You'll start to meet friends, make colleagues, and find that you've got common creative ground, common personal ground. You're going to start having a lot of fun meeting other people. And since all business is about people, and all creativity is essentially about people as well, you'll improve your people skills, and in the process gain a lot more confidence, because you're just meeting people all the time. You cannot help but get better at having conversations, at being relaxed in company, and starting to enjoy yourself. You know, there's an idea. Okay, so keep like-minded company. And number 5, if you want to be more creative, get out of your comfort zone. Okay, so get out of your comfort zone. So let's take movies as an example. You might have somebody who just says, well, you know what, I never like to watch French movies, or I never like to watch black and white movies, or I never like to watch Hollywood movies. It's just not my thing. You know what, that's not good enough. If you want to really grow as a creative person, if you want to learn your craft and discipline, it's imperative, it's absolutely vital that you expose yourself to stuff that's just outside of what you're comfortable with normally. And it's the only way you grow. I mean, if you're going to run, if you're going to become a runner, you start off with small runs around the block, a quick run along the beach. You don't start with a 26-mile marathon. You build it up. But each time you get outside of your comfort zone, you push yourself that little bit further, and you get to the point where actually you're really chunking through some major goals. You're starting to look good, you're starting to feel good, you're feeling energized, refreshed and vital, and suddenly you've got twice the strength and endurance and well-being that you had, say, 3 months earlier. So similarly, it's not good enough for somebody to say, hey, that's a Japanese movie from the 50s, it's boring, right? You're boring. If you're the kind of person who says that things are boring, actually you're boring. Because interesting people are one thing, but interested people are where it's really at. So if you can be the person who's interested in stuff that doesn't necessarily float your boat at first go, but you're willing to give it a try, you're willing to kind of look beyond what's immediately accessible and comfortable and stimulating and entertaining to you, you'll actually find, hey, you know what, that's a whole different way of looking at the world, a whole different vision, a whole different way to feel and think that I never would have chosen to enrich myself with. But because I made the effort, I've got a payoff. If you took an interest in food, would it be enough to just say, I'm only going to eat fish and chips? You've got to push the boat out and try new things, and that will definitely enrich and stimulate you, and again give you more confidence, because you're starting to say, hey, I can appreciate things that I never used to. Okay, so that's plenty for now. I've got to head out and meet some buddies for a chat. Please like, comment, subscribe. I'd love to hear from you, your notions on creativity, what works, what doesn't work for you. And I'll catch up with you over the next day or two with a couple more updates. Also, let me know your thoughts on Richard Crawford's screenwriting toolkit. I found those tools absolutely, invaluable. And there's more from Richard Crawford coming over the next few days. So God bless, thanks for watching. See you soon.